In this lesson, we are looking at page 12 of the textbook. We are still rounding whole numbers. That would be the notes that you took right here. And if you notice on this page, this is called a high impact lesson. And what that means is that this lesson will have a high impact on your test scores, because this is such an important thing to know. So on any of the high impact lessons, we want to really understand what's going on. Rounding provides estimates of quantities. Two key digits are used. The place value to round to, this is the one that we underline, and the digit to its right. This is what I'm calling the neighbor. The place value will either increase or stay the same. Remember this? It'll either round up or stay the same based on the neighbor, on the digit to the right. If the digit to the right is 5 or greater, so if the neighbor is 5 or more, round up. If the neighbor is 4 or less, round down. And we're calling that stay the same. You know that you can round to the nearest hundred by using a number line. When rounding to the nearest hundred, increase or decrease a number to its closest hundred. The 1s and 10 digits are always 0 when rounding to the nearest hundred. Okay, I'm going to go back to our notes and do this one. We want to round I gotta look. I've already 571 to the nearest hundred. I'm going to show you our method first, and then we'll look at this same one on a number line. So here's the method we've been using, where we write our number. Nothing's changed. Nothing ever will change. Doesn't matter how big the numbers get, whether you're doing decimals, it doesn't matter. It will always follow this rule. So 571 is our number, and we want to go to the hundreds place. So I look back at our neighbor here, and the neighbor tells me to do what? Round up. Neighbor says round up. So that means the 5 becomes a 6 and the ends round off. So this is 600 as the estimate. All right, if you want to use a number line, this is what it would look like. Draw yourself the number line. We know 500 is down here, and we know 600 is up here. We know halfway between there would be 550, and 571 would sit somewhere about right there. So it's going to be closer to 600 than it would be to 500. That's all they're saying. And we did look at this in our notes. Remember, we talked about the number line way. You can use either way you want to round. They're just trying to give you lots of tools that you can follow. Okay, if you check our answer, it did indeed come out to be 600, so we are correct. And here's a number line very much like ours. What they're saying is that this distance is shorter than this distance, and therefore it rounds to 600. All right, here is a test question. Emma's takeout order is $35. She rounds to the nearest 10 to include the tip. How much does Emma pay for her takeout order? So here's the question. We want to know what she pays. So we do see a number here. That's 35. I also see the instruction to round to the nearest 10. So I'm going to take that 35 that Emma paid, and I'm going to underline the tens place. The neighbor says to do what? Round up. So Emma pays $40 for her takeout order. Strategy. There are only two possible answers when rounding 35 to the nearest 10, and those are 30 and 40. You can eliminate the choices of 25 and 50 because they're not in that range. In other words, if you look at a number line, Emma's order was $35. So the low end of that range would be 30 and the high end would be 40. So we know it's not 25 or 50 because those are not in that range we're looking at. That's a good tip. You can eliminate 25 and 50 and then use the rounding rule to determine whether 35 rounded to the nearest 10 is 30 or 40. Always eliminate answers you know are incorrect. That is a very good strategy right there. Okay, let's practice on page 13. What is 910 rounded to the nearest 10? Now, you can use any strategy you want here. I'm just going to write it this way and ask myself what the neighbor says to do. The neighbor says stay the same. And the neighbor tells us what to do, neighbor gets rounded away. So this is B as in boy. What is 362 rounded to the nearest 100? Neighbor says round up. And then everybody rounds off once you do the rounding. So this is D as in dog. When rounded to the nearest 10, which number would not round to 100? Now don't get trapped here. They want us to round to the nearest 10. And they're asking me which one would not be 100. So 95, I'm going to try to squeeze in here. Neighbor says round up. So 95 would go, the 9 would roll up to a 10, so that would be 100. 99, the neighbor says round up. So the 9 becomes a 10 and the neighbor rounds off. This one, the neighbor says don't change. So we would keep the 1, we would keep the 0, and the neighbor rounds away. This one, the neighbor says round up. So this would be 100, 1, and the neighbor rounds away. So the one that does not round to 100 is D. It rounds to 110. Number 4. Gemina works 408 hours each quarter. What is the approximate number of hours Gemina works when rounded to the nearest hundred? And that may be pronounced Jimena if it's a Hispanic name. I haven't seen that name before. So if I'm saying it wrong, I apologize. All right, so the question is, what is the approximate number of hours Jimena works when rounded to the nearest hundred? So the key phrase that I want is nearest hundred. And I will take the number we're given, that's 408. I'll underline the hundreds place and look at the neighbor. Neighbor says don't change. So the 4 stays and the neighbors round off. So she is closer to 400 hours than to 500 hours. We could eliminate B and C because they're not rounded to the hundreds place. Terry bakes 34 chocolate chip cookies, 39 snickerdoodle cookies, 36 peanut butter cookies, and 35 frosted cookies. When rounded to the nearest 10. Which type of cookie has a quantity that rounds to 30? So we're supposed to take these numbers to the nearest 10, and we're looking for the one that is 30. So chocolate chip was 34, and if you round that to the nearest 10, neighbor says don't change, so you would get 30. Frosted cookies, be careful, they're reversing the order on you here. Frosted cookies is 35, and if you round those, neighbor tells me to round up on this one, that would go to 40. Peanut butter cookies are 36. Neighbor says round up. And then the snickerdoodles are 39. And the neighbor says definitely round up. I'm not sure if that was a misprint or if they meant to reverse the order. I suspect they intended to. The answer you want is A, because it's the one that rounds to 30. Which number could round to 240? Well, this has been rounded to the tens place. So I'm going to do that for all of these choices. So I have 139. Let's look at the tens place and then the neighbor. And that will round to 140. 232. That is going to round to 230. 243. We would have this one rounding to 240. And then 246, we would have it rounding to 250 if we went to the nearest 10. And we want 240, not 140. This one is not even in the range, so you could eliminate that and not even have to round it. But it's good practice. So I like this one. 240 matches that 240. All right, number 7. Ernie rounds his golf score to the nearest 10 and receives a score of 90. Which score could have been Ernie's actual score? Well, we know that he rounded to the nearest 10. And we know that we're looking for a 90. So let's round these and see which one fits. To the nearest 10, you can go through and underline all of the 10's places. And then look at the neighbor. This one is going to be an 80. This one would be a 90. This one would be a 100. That 6 is going to push that 9 up a place to a 10. And then this one would also be 100 because the neighbor says don't change the 0. So the one I'm looking for is this one, B as in boy. Number 8. Juan tells his friends that he caught a fish about 30 inches long. Juan rounded the actual length to the nearest 10. That's important. This number is also important. Which length could have been the actual length of the fish? Well, we could eliminate 18 because that's not even in the range, but let's go ahead and round it to get a 20. Then 24 would be also rounding to 20. 26, neighbor says round up this time, so it would round up to 30. And 36, neighbor says round up to 40. We want the one that rounds to 30. So that would be C as in Charlie. Number 9. Sven has a $263 sewer bill. Just going to go ahead and write that down there. A $232 trash bill. A $225 homeowners association bill. And a $160 tax bill. Which of Sven's bills could not round to 200? So we have the word not. That is in all caps, so they clearly want us to notice that. And then we have the number 200. So these are being rounded to the hundreds place. So let's mark our hundreds places and then start looking at our neighbors. 160 is approximately 200. 225 would also round to 200. 232 would also round to 200. 263, the neighbor says round up on this one. That one would round to 300. And we want that one. That's the one that would not round to 200. Number 10. Islam watches 573 minutes of rugby footage. What is the estimated number of minutes of footage he watches when the number is rounded to the nearest 100? So we want nearest 100. And then we always want to mark any numbers that we see in our problem. And there's 1. So I will take the 573 and I will round that to the nearest 100. And the neighbor says to round up. So we're going to go with 600 minutes. And that is answer A. Again, let me highlight the key elements here. We have nearest 100 and that number. So this is the answer we want. That is definitely a high impact lesson. It's a very important lesson.